He returned to the hotel after a year and found out the maid had his baby. Tell us where you're watching from, leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Enjoy the story. The rain slammed hard against the thick glass windows of the Grand Haven Hotel that March night. Lightning flashed briefly through the elegant, quiet hallways of the building, casting sharp shadows on the polished floors. Emily Carter adjusted her housekeeping cart for the third time that round. At 28, she knew every inch of the five-star hotel as if it were her own home. She had worked there for 5 years, ever since she dropped out of college to take care of her ailing grandmother. Even now, with Margaret fully recovered, Emily hadn't managed to return to her studies. Every day, she walked the luxurious floors with her uniform perfectly pressed, her brown hair tied in a neat bun, and a reserved posture that made her almost invisible to many guests. But something about that night felt different. The sky seemed heavier, charged with a strange tension, and even the staff moved with a heightened alertness. "Emily, can you check on room 1205? Asked Chloe Parker, her supervisor, stopping beside her with a slight crease between her brows. The guest called, asking for extra towels. "Sure. Is everything all right?" "I'm not sure. Reception said he sounded off. Just be careful, okay?" Emily nodded silently and picked up the freshly laundered towels. She was used to all sorts of requests, moody guests, and even the unexpected confessions from people who assumed anyone behind a uniform was merely background noise. Her footsteps were quiet over the plush 12th floor carpet as she approached room 1205. Taking a deep breath, she knocked 3 times. "Room service," she announced in a calm, professional tone. The door creaked open, revealing a tall man with tousled dark hair and sunken, tired eyes. His dress shirt was wrinkled, his tailored pants slightly askew, and he leaned against the doorframe with a weary slump. "Sorry for the late call. I just need a few towels," he said, his voice hoarse and slow. The scent of alcohol hung in the air. Emily kept a neutral expression, but her senses were alert. "No problem, sir. May I leave them in the bathroom?" He nodded, stepping clumsily aside. She entered quickly, her eyes catching signs of disarray, clothes scattered across the king-sized bed, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the coffee table, documents strewn about, and a cell phone vibrating insistently on a black folder. She placed the towels neatly on the white marble counter in the bathroom. Just as she turned to leave, a muffled sound drew her attention. He was now seated on the edge of the bed, face buried in his hands. "Are you all right?" she asked gently. He looked up, eyes glassy and rimmed with sorrow. "No, not really, but you don't need to see this. I don't have anyone to talk to." Emily hesitated. The rule was clear, don't get involved with guests. But something in his voice, raw, unguarded, spoke more of a man unraveling than someone seeking pity. Sometimes talking to a stranger helps more than talking to someone close, she said, staying at a respectful distance. "My grandma always says God puts the right people in our path when we need them most." He looked at her, surprised. "You really believe that?" "I do, and I believe the storms outside sometimes reflect what we carry inside." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Wise words. I'm Nathan Blake, or I used to be. Tonight, I don't know who I am anymore. I'm Emily. Maybe you're still the same person. Sometimes we have to lose everything to discover what truly matters." Nathan studied her for a long moment, as if trying to understand how this woman, someone he'd just met, could speak with such clarity. "My family, my career, it all fell apart. I found out my wife was cheating on me with my business partner. Worst part? Everyone knew but me. 10 years of marriage." Emily felt a tightness in her chest. "I'm sorry. That must be incredibly painful." The only sound between them was the relentless rain and a distant rumble of thunder. She should have left, but she didn't. "Can I make you some tea? It might help more than whiskey." Nathan gave a faint smile, one that looked like it took effort. You do that? Of course, I'll get it from the pantry. She went, not out of duty, but because his pain stirred a compassion in her that she couldn't turn off. When she returned, he was standing by the window. She served tea in 2 fine porcelain cups and sat beside him. He spoke with a vulnerable honesty, not expecting judgment. A doctor, founder of a clinic, now a man in ruins. Emily said little, but she listened closely. She spoke of Margaret, of their modest life downtown, of the faith she held since childhood. And when he asked if she still believed God had a plan, even when everything seemed to collapse, she said, "It's what gets me out of bed every day." The conversation lasted for hours, unnoticed. The storm outside never let up, but something inside the room settled into an unexpected calm. Nathan seemed more sober, and Emily, though silent, began to feel something unfamiliar stirring. When he thanked her for staying, called her special, and touched her face with a kind of reverence, something inside her trembled. There was no lust, just weariness, grief, and the quiet start of something gentle. "Just Nathan," he whispered when she called him doctor. What followed was not impulse nor escape, it was connection, a suspended moment where 2 strangers found one another. And before dawn broke, Emily fell asleep in the arms of a man she barely knew, but whose sorrow she understood with uncanny clarity. Emily woke up just before 7, her body still warm beneath the expensive sheets and surrounded by the quiet comfort of a room where she never should have spent the night. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The scent of cedar lingered. On the pillow, the Egyptian cotton comforter felt soft beneath her hands, and the distant sound of a city still wet from the storm filtered through the windows. When she turned, she saw Nathan still asleep. His breathing was steady, his face calmer than it had been the night before. She watched him for a few seconds before the full weight of reality returned. Her uniform was draped over the armchair, her shoes at the foot of the bed, and the hotel wristband still clipped to her badge. Everything around her confirmed what she already knew. She had crossed a line, one that could cost her job, her stability, and the reputation she had worked so hard to build. She rose slowly, dressed in silence, and with her hair still a bit undone, looked for a notepad. She wrote a few words in firm handwriting. "Thank you for letting me help. God bless you. Emily." She left the note on the coffee table beside the empty teacup and walked out without looking back. In the hallway, she moved quickly, trying to avoid any co-workers who might see her leaving a guest's room after hours. In the locker room, she redid her bun with her fingers and washed her face twice in the cold sink. When she finally looked at herself in the mirror, she was no longer the same woman who had walked in the night before. There was no regret, but the fear was very real. Fear of consequences, fear of judgment, fear of something she couldn't yet name. On the way home, the sky was still heavy with clouds. She took the subway downtown and walked to the small building where she lived with her grandmother. When she walked in, she found Margaret preparing coffee. "Did you work late?" her grandmother asked, peering over her glasses. "A little. Some unexpected issues with the guests." Emily smiled, but Margaret didn't press further. That old silence between them spoke volumes. Over breakfast, the subject didn't return. Emily pretended to read the newspaper, and her grandmother didn't insist. When she lay down for a few hours before her next night shift, Emily couldn't sleep. The image of the note on the table, Nathan's worn face, the way he had fallen. Asleep, holding her hand, everything spun in a confusing whirl. When she returned to work that night, her supervisor, Claire, greeted her with a neutral expression. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, it's fine." The guest in 1205 checked out. "This morning, asked for his things to be taken to the car early." Emily simply nodded. "Did he leave anything at the front desk?" "No." Claire gave her a mildly curious look, but didn't press. And just like that, life resumed its apparent normalcy. In the following days, Emily threw herself into work with more dedication than ever. She avoided the 12th floor, but sometimes she was assigned to the upper rooms. Every time she passed room 1205, her heart raced. Nathan hadn't left a note, a number, or any sign that he intended to stay in touch. He had vanished. She tried to discreetly search his name in the hotel system, but the profile was incomplete. Paid in cash, no ID, no affiliation with any. In company, the name Nathan Blake didn't yield any useful results online either. There were men with that name in other cities, but none with a familiar face. The total absence of clues confirmed what she already suspected. He had disappeared, and maybe he had meant to. By the third week after that night, Emily began to feel different. Small details, physical reactions she could no longer ignore. Nausea in the morning, dizziness during shifts, sudden aversions to certain scents. She tried to deny it, telling herself it was just stress, lack of sleep, poor nutrition, but deep down, she knew. When she vomited in the staff bathroom for the second time in one morning, Claire noticed. "Emily, you're pale. Go see a doctor." "It's just a stomach bug. It'll pass." This has been going on for days. It's not normal. That afternoon, she left work early, citing a headache. She took the subway to a distant neighborhood, entered a pharmacy where no one knew her, and bought 2 pregnancy tests. Back home, she locked herself in the bathroom and waited in total silence, as if time could somehow be held back. The first test showed 2 lines, so did the second. She sat down on the cold tile floor, her back against the wall, holding the tests in her hands, trying to breathe steadily. There was no more doubt. In the living room, Margaret was watching the evening news. "Emily, dinner's ready." "I'll be right there, Grandma." She hid the tests in a shoebox at the back of her closet and came out of the bathroom with a freshly washed face. At the table, she barely touched her food. Her grandmother noticed. "Didn't like the soup. Just tired." That night, lying in her narrow bed, she prayed like she hadn't in a long time. She didn't ask for answers, only strength. Strength to keep going, strength to tell the truth, strength to face a reality she had barely begun to comprehend on her own. And even without knowing how, she felt something inside her had already changed. Emily spent the next few days moving on autopilot. She went to work, completed her tasks with precision, returned home, and helped her grandmother with the evening routine. She slept poorly, haunted by fragmented dreams where lightning crashed against the windows of the Grand Haven Hotel, and one name, Nathan, lingered like a constant shadow in her mind. The nausea persisted, and more people began to notice something wasn't right. Claire kept offering help, but Emily brushed it off. She said it was a virus, a common bug, and smiled as if everything was fine. Until one morning in the locker room, when she could no longer pretend. After rushing to the bathroom and sitting on the floor with her forehead against her knees, she felt Claire's presence just outside the stall. "Emily, it's me. Can I come in?" She slowly unlocked the door, her face damp with sweat and tears. "Claire, I need to tell you something. But you have to promise not to tell anyone." Inside the bathroom, surrounded by white tiles and the distant hum of vacuum cleaners in the hall, Emily told her everything. The night with the guest, the quiet goodbye, the positive tests. Claire listened in silence, her eyes growing wider as the story unfolded. "He didn't leave any contact info, nothing? Just his name, Nathan Blake, and even that, I'm not sure it was real." "You tried looking him up?" "I did. Nothing. Not even in the hotel system. He paid in cash." Claire covered her mouth, absorbing the news. "And your grandma, does she know?" "Not yet, but I'll tell her tonight." "You're not alone in this, okay? We'll find him. My cousin works at a teaching hospital, knows a lot of people. Maybe he's heard of a doctor by that name." Emily nodded, her eyes full of tears. For the first time in weeks, she felt the weight of her secret slightly lift. That night, after a simple dinner of soup and bread, Emily waited for Margaret to finish putting away the silverware before approaching her. "Grandma, can I talk to you for a minute?" Her grandmother turned off the TV and looked at her with the same gaze she'd used since Emily was a child, the one that always sensed something was wrong before a word was said. "Of course, sweetheart. I'm pregnant." Margaret didn't react right away. She just stared, as if she needed the words to be repeated to fully register them. "Pregnant? Yes. I found out a few days ago. I took the tests." The silence that followed stretched long, but there was no harshness in it, just surprise. "And the father?" "A guest. Someone I met on a tough night. He doesn't know, and I have no way to find him." Margaret lowered her head for a moment, then stood up and embraced her granddaughter tightly. "Then you're not alone. You never have been." Emily said nothing more. She just cried, her head resting on her grandmother's shoulder, feeling that no matter how uncertain the future, Margaret's unconditional love would remain her anchor. In the weeks that followed, the symptoms intensified. Her belly wasn't showing yet, but the fatigue and dizziness became more frequent. With Claire's help, Emily adjusted her work routine and avoided more physically demanding rooms. She preferred daytime shifts and quieter areas of the hotel. She tried to stay under the radar, but still faced curious looks, whispered questions, and hushed gossip in the break room. Claire did what she could to shield her friend, covering for her absences and deflecting mean-spirited talk. Meanwhile, she kept digging. She messaged colleagues, discreetly mentioned the doctor's name, and even tried cross-referencing local health professional directories. But every lead went cold. Nathan Blake remained a ghost, real only in Emily's memory. One afternoon, after a meeting in Mr. Carpentier's office, Emily had to go up to the 12th floor to deliver an item a guest had left behind. She walked the hallway carefully, trying not to look at room 1205, but her eyes wandered. She paused in front of the door. It was shut, now occupied by some other guest with no connection to her story. Yet in that moment, unable to hold it back, tears began to fall. She slipped into the laundry room and sat behind a pile of clean sheets, knees drawn in, hands covering her face. "Why did you vanish like that?" she whispered. "How am I supposed to raise a child alone?" The sound of the door opening broke the moment. It was Claire. Seeing Emily like that, she didn't hesitate. She sat beside her and wrapped her arms around her. "Hey, we're in this together, okay? You've got this. What if he never comes back? What if my child grows up not knowing who their father is? Then they'll grow up knowing who their mother is. A strong, honest woman who never ran from her responsibilities." Claire's words didn't erase the fear, but they brought a needed steadiness. And that night, back home, Emily lay beside her grandmother and whispered with her hand resting on her belly, "I'm going to take care of you no matter what." Time moved in strange ways. For Emily, the days felt long, yet the months passed in the blink of an eye. By the 5th month of pregnancy, she knew it was time to officially inform the hotel. Claire had been urging her to speak up for weeks, and even though Emily hesitated, she understood she couldn't hide it much longer. Her belly had begun to show, the nausea had eased, but the fatigue lingered. That morning, after putting on a loose blouse and tying her hair in a rushed ponytail, she walked into the manager's office. Mr. Carpentier greeted her with a curt nod, busy shuffling papers on his desk. "Sir, I'd like to let you know that I'm pregnant." He looked up, caught off guard by the announcement. "I see, and why are you only telling us now?" "I was afraid. I thought I might lose my job." Mr. Carpentier sighed and folded his arms. "You have legal rights, Miss Carter, but we'll need to reassign your duties. Housekeeping isn't suitable for someone in your condition." The decision came quickly after that meeting. Emily was moved to the laundry department. The work was less physically demanding, but also less appreciated. Her paycheck took a subtle cut, which she accepted without protest. She returned home, exhausted, but determined to stretch every dollar. At the apartment, Margaret juggled household chores and slowly transformed the small room into a nursery. Decorations began to appear on the walls, little clouds and stars she sewed from leftover fabric scraps. "Have you thought of any names?" Margaret asked one night as she stitched another felt cloud. "If it's a girl, I was thinking Leona. If it's a boy, Logan." Logan, strong and gentle, I like it. It was the name of the angel who brought good news. And this baby, even if unexpected, is the biggest blessing of my life. Outside their little world, nothing changed. No news from Nathan, no message, no sign. Claire kept trying on her own, asking around about doctors, checking directories and databases. One day she came with a lead. There was a Dr. Nathan Blake, a cardiologist listed at a private hospital in Portland, but the listing showed he was on extended leave. I called. The receptionist said he hasn't worked there in nearly a year, and no one knows why. Emily nodded slowly. Maybe that's for the best. Don't say that. He has a right to know, and I have the right to protect my child. The conversation ended there, even if Claire disagreed. In the following months, Emily focused entirely on her pregnancy. Her days were a constant shuffle of work, doctor visits, nursery prep, and restless nights. But scattered among the exhaustion were sweet moments. Margaret spent hours reading baby food recipes. The nursery grew more colorful every week, and neighbors brought over gently used clothes and toys. Emily folded every piece with care, treating each gesture like an act of love. When only a few weeks remained before her due date, she informed the hotel of her maternity leave. Claire accompanied her to the office. "Mr. Carpentier, my leave will start in 2 weeks. Is the paperwork in order?" "Yes, my doctor already sent the certificate." "Very well." Before she left, Mr. Carpentier paused, his tone slightly warmer. "I hope everything goes smoothly. Take care of yourself." It was the most personal thing he'd ever said to her. Logan was born on a chilly morning in January. The labor was long and exhausting, but without complications. The moment Emily held him for the first time, a flood of emotion surged through her. His dark brown eyes, calm expression. He was perfect. Beside her, Claire cried with a goofy grin, and Margaret whispered a quiet prayer. "He looks like someone I know," Claire teased. Emily just gave a soft nod. "He's perfect." In the days that followed, their apartment buzzed with visitors. Neighbors brought cakes and baby gifts, and little Logan slowly became the heart of their modest home. At night, as he slept in his crib, Emily watched him for long stretches, overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't fully name. Love, fear, hope, and the absence of a father who might never meet his son. By the time Logan turned 3 months, he responded to smiles, clutched Emily's finger with surprising strength, and calmed at the sound of her voice. Margaret rocked him with old lullabies, and Claire dropped by almost daily to help however she could. When it came time to return to work, Emily prepared everything meticulously, labeled diapers, sterilized bottles, and written instructions taped to the wall. Her heart ached, but she knew she had to go back. At the Grand Haven Hotel, her return was quiet. Most of the staff had changed in recent months, and few knew her story. "Think you'll manage it all?" Claire asked. "I don't really have a choice, but yes, I will." Emily hadn't spoken Nathan's name in a long time. She tried not to think about him, but somewhere deep inside, quiet and unresolved, a question lingered. What if he came back? The Grand Haven Hotel buzzed with anticipation. Posters were taped inside elevators, the restaurant updated its menu, and the front desk staff underwent extra training. In just a few days, the 15th Annual National Cardiology Conference would take place there. bringing together physicians from across the country for lectures, workshops, and social events spread throughout the hotel's main floors. For Emily, it simply meant more movement, more duties, and more overtime, and every dollar counted. Back in her housekeeping role, she rearranged her shifts to make it home in time to nurse Logan and assist her grandmother with nighttime care. At 3.5 months, Logan was more alert, more expressive, and he lit up the moment she walked through the door. However tired she was, peace washed over her the instant he was in her arms. On the morning before the conference, Claire walked into the staff room with a clipboard and swift instructions. Mr. Carpentier wants extra attention to the upper floors. A lot of guests are arriving today, earlier than expected. Emily picked up the shift schedule. There it was, the 12th floor. Among the rooms, one number gripped her chest for a split second, 1205. She took a deep breath. It wasn't the first time she'd been assigned there since Logan's birth, but each visit brought back a vivid memory. That stormy night, the chamomile tea, the unexpected closeness of a man who'd seemed on the verge of collapse. And after that, nothing. No word, no message, only the memory and a baby now sleeping in a second-hand crib beside her bed. That afternoon, as she wiped the bathroom mirror in room 1205, her phone vibrated in her pocket. It was Margaret. "Emily, I'm sorry to bother you. Logan has a slight fever. It's nothing serious, but he's crying a lot." She stood upright immediately. "Do you want me to come home now?" "If you can. He calms faster with you." Emily checked the time. Just 2 hours left in her shift. She found Claire, who quickly offered a solution. "Don't worry, I'll reassign the rest of your rooms to the next shift. Go check on him." "Thank you, Claire. I owe you." She hurried out of the hotel, unaware that just 30 minutes later, Nathan Blake would walk through the same front doors. Thinner, freshly shaven and calm in a way he hadn't been before. A badge around his neck confirmed his role in the conference. "Good afternoon, Dr. Blake," the receptionist greeted warmly. "Welcome back to the Grand Haven." "Thank you. It's been a while." She handed him the room key. "Room 1205. Everything's ready for you." He glanced at the card and smiled faintly. "Funny. Same room as last time." No one commented. He simply rolled his suitcase toward the elevator, unaware that this coincidence would awaken everything he had left unresolved. Meanwhile, at home, Emily rocked Logan in her arms. His fever had already gone down. Margaret brewed herbal tea, and the apartment slowly returned to its usual rhythm. "Just a scare," her grandmother said. "But you know how it is. Any little thing with a baby worries us." "I know, but thank you for calling. He needed you, and between us, I think you needed him too." Emily smiled and kissed Logan's forehead. "Tomorrow, I'm back at the hotel. The conference runs for 3 days. It's going to be tough." Margaret nodded. "But it'll pass. Everything does." The next morning, Emily arrived early. The hallways were already busy. Well-dressed doctors talked on the phone, carried folders, and sipped coffee in the lobby. She picked up the room list. Room 1205 was on it again, and this time it was occupied. She took the elevator up, distracted by the noise around her. At the door, she knocked as usual. "Housekeeping, just checking to see if everything's in order." "Come in, please." That voice. She froze for a moment, holding the clipboard to her chest. Her hand trembled slightly. She turned the doorknob slowly and entered, eyes fixed on the checklist. "Sir, I just wanted to confirm if you need any additional..." When her eyes met his, time collapsed inward. Nathan stood in the middle of the room, wearing a pale blue shirt and dark slacks, slimmer, steadier, but unmistakably him. "Emily," he said gently. She let the clipboard fall to the floor. Shock, confusion, a flood of emotion all at once. "Dr. Blake." "Just Nathan." She bent to pick up the clipboard. Her hands still shook. I need to go." "Wait, Don't run. I didn't run. I was doing my job. It wasn't just a job. We both know that. Emily met his gaze, her eyes glossy. Where have you been? Trying to fix my life. That night made me realize how lost I was. I spent months in therapy. I got divorced. I tried to rebuild myself. She stepped back. Doctor. Nathan, please. She looked away. You don't know what happened. Then tell me. At that moment, her phone rang. She answered instinctively. Emily, sorry to bother you. Logan woke up crying. I think he's hungry. Nathan's expression shifted when he heard the name. Logan? She hung up quickly. The silence in the room grew heavy. Emily, who's Logan? She looked him straight in the eyes. There was no more running. Nathan, there's something I need to tell you. Emily closed the door behind her, but didn't take another step. She stood there face to face with Nathan, as if time had rewound itself with cruel precision. Her phone was still in her hand, and the name she had spoken, Logan, hung in the air between them, impossible to ignore. Nathan took a cautious step forward. Logan is your son. She nodded, eyes locked on his. Yes. His face paled instantly, as if the words needed extra time to make sense. He stood still, trying to process what he had just heard. His breathing shallow, his gaze steady, as if awaiting a confirmation he wasn't ready to receive. You're saying you have a child? Yes. But you already had this child. When that night happened? No. Then he is mine? He is. Her stance remained steady, even as her heart pounded. I tried to find you for weeks, but you vanished. Nathan sat on the edge of the bed, as if the weight of her words had knocked the strength from his legs. A child. I have a child. Emily didn't approach. She kept a safe distance, arms crossed as if guarding the fragile structure she had built alone these past months. His name is Logan. He's 3.5 months old. Why didn't you try harder? Why didn't you keep looking? She bristled. Because you were a ghost, Nathan. You paid in cash, left no phone number, no usable data in the system. You were impossible to find. He stayed silent for a few beats. There was no valid excuse for his disappearance. Even if he hadn't meant to vanish, that's exactly what he had done. I never meant to disappear, Emily, not even for a day. But I was broken. I spiraled. I shut down everything. My phone, social media, even sold my practice. I just wanted to disappear from the world and from myself. Her eyes didn't leave his. I understand, but that doesn't undo what happened. I know you were alone. I went to the doctor alone. I worked until I couldn't anymore. I made plans that made no sense but kept going because I had no other option. She inhaled slowly. He was born on a cold January morning, and no one was there but my grandmother and a friend. Nathan took a step forward, his shoulders heavy. I wasn't there, and that kills me. But I'm here now. Not to fix anything, not to make up for the past. I just want to be part of his life. She didn't respond right away. Her expression flickered, as if searching for clarity within an emotional storm. I don't know how to handle this yet. You can't just come back and expect things to fall into place. I know, and I don't, but I want to start somewhere. She held her voice steady. I need time. Of course. And today is not the day you meet him. I understand, but I'll be here until Sunday. Please, reach out. Emily nodded, but said nothing else. She left the room quickly, her heart pounding with every step. The elevator took longer than usual. Inside, she rested her head against the cool wall and took a deep breath. Logan was still too young to grasp any of this, but she needed to be strong enough to decide what kind of presence she would allow in his life and in hers. That night, Margaret was steeping tea when Emily walked in and hung her bag on the kitchen chair. He's back. She said simply, "Who?" "Logan's father." Margaret turned off the stove and approached her. "And what did he say?" "That he didn't leave on purpose, that he was lost, sick, in crisis, that now he wants to be part of Logan's life." "And you?" Emily hesitated. "I don't know. I know he had no way of knowing, but part of me is afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of trusting, of getting hurt, of letting Logan bond with him, only to watch him leave again." Margaret took her hand firmly. "Every child deserves to know their father, and every woman deserves to know whether something can still grow. But only you can choose how and when to open that door." The next morning, Emily woke earlier than usual. Logan slept peacefully, arms stretched out, face serene. She dressed him carefully in the light blue onesie her grandmother had embroidered, then packed a bag with everything he might need. When Margaret asked if she was sure, Emily replied honestly, "No, but I know it's the right thing to do." On the way to the hotel, each step felt slower. When she reached room 1205, she stood outside for a moment. Then she knocked. Nathan opened the door almost instantly. He looked at Emily, then at the baby sleeping in the stroller. "This is Logan?" She nodded. He stepped closer, eyes welling as he knelt beside the stroller. "He's..." "Yes." She didn't need to finish the sentence. "Can I hold him?" "You can." He gently lifted his son. Logan opened his eyes and stared at him for a second, and that single look was enough. Nathan cried, soundlessly, as the tears streamed down. "Hi, Logan. It's me, your dad." Emily watched them. It was hard, but somehow it felt like time was trying to set things right. Emily continued her shifts at the Grand Haven Hotel, always keeping one eye on the clock. During each break, she wondered if Nathan was still upstairs, if he was thinking about her, if he was waiting. But he never came down. He didn't seek her out. No messages, no pressure. He simply stayed where he said he'd be, letting her have the time she needed. And maybe that's why she went to him the next day. Not to talk, just to allow one more moment between him and Logan. She arrived in the late afternoon, before starting her night shift, with the baby in her arms and the same seriousness in her eyes. She knocked, he opened, and she said only, "He's awake." Nathan understood. He stepped aside to let her in. He held his son with more ease this time. He stroked the baby's head, spoke softly to him, and stayed with him on the couch while Emily remained standing, watchful, but no longer stopping it. On the third visit, Logan smiled at the sight of his father's face. It was brief, instinctive, but enough to change something. "Did he recognize me?" Nathan asked, looking up at her. He smiled. "That doesn't mean much." "It means everything." Emily remained impassive, not because she didn't feel it, but because she still didn't trust. By the fourth visit, she no longer stood the whole time. She sat at the edge of an armchair, diaper bag beside her, watching as father and son interacted. Most of the visit passed in silence, broken only by Logan's baby noises, little hands waving at the world in his own language. When it was time to leave, Nathan asked, "Can I walk you both to the lobby?" "No, not yet." He didn't push. Chloe had been watching from a distance, but closely. When she found out Logan's father was back, she found Emily in the locker room. "Are you okay?" "I am." "Does he want to be a part of it?" "Seems like it." "And you?" "I'm trying to figure out if this could be real." Chloe sat beside her on the bench. "You don't have to decide everything now. Just don't forget to take care of yourself too. This isn't just about Logan, it's about you too." Emily nodded. It made sense. Living it was the hard part. That night, back home, Margaret noticed something had shifted. "Has he come looking for you again?" "No, but I brought Logan to him." "You're allowing yourself." "I'm trying not to lose myself." Margaret poured tea, as always, and they sat in silence for a while. "Is he still leaving?" she asked. "Tomorrow, the conference ends." "Do you want him to stay?" "I don't know. I don't want that to be the only thing I think about." On the day of departure, Emily arrived early for her shift. She planned to finish work and head straight home, but as she walked through the lobby, she saw Nathan sitting near the reception desk, suitcase beside him. He saw her almost instantly and stood, as if he'd been waiting for one last chance to see her. "I was going to leave a letter. I'm glad you came." She stopped a few steps away. "You're leaving today?" "Yes, the conference is over. But I don't want this to be the end." Emily held her composure. "What exactly do you want? To be part of Logan's life, to stay close, to belong, if you'll let me." She paused. "He needs stability, and I need accountability. That's what I want to give. I'm looking for an apartment nearby. I didn't come here out of curiosity, Emily. I came because I finally understood what matters." She nodded once. "That's between you and him. Build that connection slowly." "And with you?" She took a breath. "I'm his mother. I'll always be around." Nathan didn't push further. He picked up his suitcase, gave a small wave, and walked out of the hotel without hurry, leaving behind the version of himself who had arrived months earlier. Emily stood for a while, watching the revolving doors turn. She didn't know what to make of it all yet. But one thing was certain: Logan had a father. And even if that didn't define the future, it completely changed the present. The following week, Nathan kept his word. He rented a small apartment just 3 blocks from Emily's building. He started spending mornings at Margaret's, bringing fruit, helping with breakfast, learning how to warm bottles. In the afternoons, he took Logan out to the park. Emily watched it all closely. There was no intimacy yet, but there was routine. And when done right, routine could become connection. Emily's routine shifted in small, almost unnoticeable ways over the following weeks. Her alarm still rang at the same hour, her care for Logan remained steady, and work at the hotel continued to demand all her energy. But now, part of her day quietly included Nathan, not fully in her life, but lingering nearby with small gestures and a quiet presence. He had kept his word. He'd rented an apartment just a few blocks from the modest building where Emily lived with Margaret. The place was simple, stripped of the luxury he had probably once known. 1 bedroom, a functional kitchen, a sparsely furnished living room, and a rocking chair he had installed himself, despite not knowing if he'd ever be allowed to use it. There were no grand announcements. Nathan didn't try to force anything. He simply began to show up, at first just to take Logan for a walk, then to offer help with groceries. Gradually, without asking for anything in return, he became part of the background. Margaret watched him carefully. One day, seeing him walk down the sidewalk with Logan in his arms, she commented to her granddaughter, "He's trying, Emily." "I know. And he's doing it the right way. No noise, no demands. Maybe because he knows there's no room for mistakes. Or maybe because he's learned that real love is patience." Emily didn't respond. She stood by the window, holding a mug of tea, watching her son with his father in a scene that felt both unfamiliar and natural. Nathan took those moments seriously. He never showed up unannounced. He never overstayed. Sometimes he only came by to drop off a bag of baby supplies. Other times, he lay on the floor with Logan on a soft towel, making silly faces that made the baby giggle. When Emily was home, she stayed on the sidelines. She spoke in neutral tones, allowed the visits, watched closely. It wasn't trust yet, it was coexistence. But that coexistence, quiet and careful, began to shift something inside her that she couldn't quite name. At the hotel, Chloe noticed a change in her friend's demeanor. "Sleeping better?" "A little." "And Logan?" "He's calmer. He smiles more." "And you, Emily?" She took a long pause. "I'm more alert." Chloe raised an eyebrow. "Alert to what?" to everything. What he does, what he doesn't do, what he's trying to do. Chloe nodded slowly. That's called being open. I don't know if I am, but I'm not as closed off as before. One afternoon, while Emily warmed a bottle and Margaret folded laundry on the couch, Nathan showed up earlier than usual. Thought I'd take Logan for a quick walk around the block. Is that all right? Margaret glanced up. It is. But first, help me with these. She gestured toward the clothesline in the laundry nook. Emily said nothing as she watched Nathan gently unclip Logan's tiny clothes and pass them to Margaret one by one. You're learning fast, Margaret said. I'm trying. Then you can peel the potatoes for dinner too. He laughed. Sure. Where are they? Emily remained quiet, just taking in the moment. Simple and mundane, yet more vivid than anything she had noticed in a long time. That evening, after dinner, Logan fell asleep in his father's arms. Margaret had already retired to her room, and Emily was clearing the table. Nathan carefully laid the baby in the crib and turned back toward the kitchen, still filled with the warm scent of food and lit by the soft evening light. I didn't know this was possible, he said, glancing around. What? This peace, this kind of life? Emily dried her hands. It's built. With effort, I imagine. With choices, he nodded, still keeping his distance. I know I have a long road ahead, but I want to be here, to be a part of this, however I can. She looked at him with less stiffness than before. Let's see how you handle the next diaper change. He chuckled. I've watched the tutorials, but if they're anything like cooking videos, I'm probably not ready. She smiled too. And that night, without meaning to, Emily took a small but genuine step toward what might come next. Autumn arrived slowly, with chilly mornings and golden leaves piling up along the sidewalks of the neighborhood. Each week, Emily's routine reshaped itself subtly. Nothing dramatic, nothing that stirred gossip among the neighbors. But within that small apartment, filled with the scent of brewed coffee and baby powder, changes were noticeable to anyone paying close attention. Nathan was now a part of the daily rhythm. Not just an occasional visitor, but someone who tried to understand the house's pace, Logan's habits, nap times, and the soft whimper after vaccinations. On a grey Tuesday, he arrived under an open umbrella, health clinic paperwork in hand. He had scheduled Logan's monthly shots, picked up the pediatrician's recommended medications, and brought simple pastries from the bakery. He wasn't expecting praise. He just wanted to be there. And he was. Logan recognized him now. When Nathan walked in, the baby kicked his legs and made noises somewhere between a cry and a laugh. It was unlike anything Emily had imagined months earlier, when she wasn't sure she'd ever see Nathan again. But now her son sought him out, and more than that, he responded to him. Emily had also started to notice small things she hadn't before. How he placed a burp cloth over his shoulder, the way his large hands held a bottle gently, how he actually listened, even when she talked about the mundane. One day, watching him distracted with Logan in his arms, she stared too long. He looked up and smiled faintly. He didn't say anything, but he didn't look away either. In that brief exchange, something unspoken stirred. It was no longer only about the child. Margaret picked up on everything. She said little but watched closely. That same night, as she folded Logan's tiny clothes on the couch, she spoke softly to her granddaughter, as if voicing a passing thought. Sometimes we think we're tying a knot to something, and realize we've tied ourselves in too. Emily didn't reply, just folded the cloth in her hands with more care, her eyes fixed on an undefined spot on the wall. She understood what her grandmother meant, and it wasn't wrong. I don't know what he feels. He feels what he shows, and he's showing a lot. I'm just afraid of mistaking care for something else. Then wait, but keep your eyes open. So did you. Next week, Logan ran a low fever after one of the vaccines. Nathan insisted on staying the night in case they needed a hospital. He slept on the couch after helping change sweaty sheets, checking Logan's temperature and keeping a damp cloth on his forehead. Emily didn't protest. She was too tired, too worried, and quietly grateful not to be alone. By morning, Logan was better. Nathan was still sleeping, curled on the couch with his jacket as a blanket. She made coffee and stood for a moment watching. The man who months ago was a stranger in a hotel room, now he was Logan's father, and maybe something more. On Friday, they all went for a walk to the neighborhood park. Logan giggled in the stroller with each bump and sway, and both adults laughed along, free from pretense. On the way back, Emily asked, "You still living near the station?" "Yeah," thought about moving closer, didn't want to overstep. It would be practical. He gave her a half smile. Practical isn't the same as welcome. She glanced away briefly before answering, "Maybe they're not so different." He said nothing more, but something between them had shifted. It felt more defined now, more certain. Later that day, with Logan asleep in the stroller and Margaret napping in her room, Emily and Nathan sat together in the kitchen. The late sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, bathing the space in a rare calm. It was the kind of silence that didn't press, just made words when they came feel clearer. Nathan stirred his tea slowly, aimlessly. Emily rested her, arms on the table, her eyes fixed on him. "You seem different," she said. He looked up. "I am." She kept her expression measured. "Does everyone change?" "Some only after they lose what they thought they could control." Emily looked at her own hand, as if thinking aloud. "I changed too, tougher in some ways, softer in others." "That happens when someone needs you all the time." She nodded lightly. "Still, even when I'm exhausted, sometimes I look around and think I'm where I'm supposed to be." Nathan leaned back slightly, studying her face. "I feel something like that when I'm here, even if I don't quite know what I'm doing." "No one really does, Nathan, not even the ones who plan everything." He smiled, and for a moment their gaze held longer than usual. "Do you think we could talk about more than just Logan?" She didn't respond right away, but she didn't change the subject either. "Maybe it's time to stop pretending the only reason you're here is to change diapers." He laughed softly, surprised by her honesty. "So, can I stay longer tomorrow?" "You can, but come early. Logan loves his morning bath." Nathan nodded, and as he cleared the mugs from the table, something subtle lingered in the air, an opening. It wasn't romance, not yet, but it was more than routine now. Winter was starting to show its face, bringing shorter afternoons, heavier coats, and the need to warm Logan's bottle a bit earlier. Inside the apartment, though, the atmosphere felt different. Their routine wasn't what it used to be. Emily no longer had to rush to do everything alone. Nathan was around more often, not just for the duties of fatherhood, but for everyday gestures, putting away groceries, taking out the trash, reheating soup. His presence was steady, real, and didn't need validation at every turn. He had come back to stay, and little by little she was letting that be part of the present. Some days, he arrived early just to help with Logan's bath and hang the clean clothes to dry. Other days, he came after work but still knelt on the living room rug to play with his son. Emily watched, and it affected her in a way that made her body alert and her heart calm. Their conversations had shifted. They no longer revolved solely around the baby. They talked about movies, forgotten books, shared memories they hadn't known they had. One evening in the kitchen, Emily stood, with her arms crossed, leaning against the counter. The dim lamp from the living room cast soft shadows on the floor. Logan was asleep and Margaret had turned in early. It was just the two of them again in a space that felt more and more like home. "It's strange," she said, looking at her empty mug. "Having someone here after doing everything alone for so long. Strange. In a good way? He asked, stepping closer. I don't know yet, but it doesn't scare me anymore. Nathan leaned beside her on the counter. They stood in silence for a few seconds. Sometimes I watch you with Logan and think, this isn't how I imagined any of this, but maybe it's better this way. She looked up at him. I didn't imagine it either, but I like seeing you with him. I like when you stay. He paused, his voice quieter. And with me. Emily didn't look away. I'm still figuring that out, but I think I like when you stay for me too. He stepped closer, his hand brushing her arm. I really want to kiss you right now. She didn't answer with words, just lifted her face, eyes steady, and gave a nod. The kiss that followed was a quiet confirmation, unhurried but intentional. A kiss that said they didn't need to wait anymore for something already there. Afterward, they sat on the couch, talking for a while about his job, about the kind of father he wanted to be, about the fears that still lingered for both of them. Wendy, she stood up, slowly dimming the lights. He settled into the cushions. Good night, Emily. Good night, Nathan. She brought him a blanket, tucking it over his legs with a gesture that felt natural, almost automatic. The bed's taken, she said with a small smile. But the couch is comfy. Tonight, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. She turned off the living room light. From the crib, Logan breathed quietly. And from the couch came the peaceful sound of someone who was no longer just passing through. The next morning, she woke before both of them. Logan was still asleep, and Nathan lay curled up on the couch under the blanket she'd given him. He was on his side, one hand under his head, his face calm, as if he'd finally rested after months of tension. Emily stood there for a few seconds, just watching. Then she moved quietly, made coffee in the kitchen, and stood at the window with her mug in hand. She didn't know exactly what came next, but something inside her had shifted. The urgency was gone, as were the walls she'd built to stay safe. All that remained was a quiet certainty. Things were going well, and for now, that was enough. The end. What did you think of this story? Don't forget to leave a comment and share it with your friends. See you next time.